Morbid Facts, Part 366. During the 1980s, Rebecca Schaeffer was the star of the popular CBS sitcom My Sister Sam. But in 1989, she was fatally shot in the doorway of her West Hollywood apartment by an obsessed fan who had been stalking her for over 3 years. The 21-year-old's death led to the passing of some of the first anti-stalking laws in America. This devastating photo was taken by Tom Stoddard during the Sudanese famine in 1998. It shows a well-nourished Sudanese man stealing a bag of corn from a starving child after it was given to him by a charity. Here's a photo of the unidentified victims of John Wayne Gacy being laid to rest at a mass funeral. In 2006, 18-year-old Ryan Waller was shot in the face during a Phoenix home invasion. His girlfriend was killed, but Ryan somehow survived. However, police mistakenly treated Ryan as a suspect, not a victim. Despite a severe bullet wound in his head, Ryan was interrogated for hours and denied medical treatment. He eventually passed away as a result of the horrific negligence. Morbid Facts, Part 367. There's typically an IQ minimum of 80 points to serve in the U.S. military. But to meet the manpower requirements of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Army loosened up on this policy and began recruiting soldiers with mental disabilities. These men were known as McNamara's morons and died at 5 times the rate of other Americans in the war. This is also what the character Forrest Gump was based on. A suicide bomber in Afghanistan was thwarted by a stray dog which barked and snarled at the man, causing him to prematurely detonate at the entrance. The dog was then flown to the United States and appeared on Oprah before being adopted. But tragically, she ran away from home and was captured by an animal shelter which ended up euthanizing her by mistake. In 1943, Polish ballerina Francesca Mann arrived at Auschwitz. When ordered to take off her clothes, she did so provocatively to divert the attention of the guards. While the roll call officer was distracted, she grabbed his gun and shot the man in the head. She then managed to wound another guard before other prisoners joined her rebellion until they were all shot dead. Morbid Facts, Part 368. These are the hands of Japanese serial killer Tsutomu Miyazaki. He was born with a rare birth defect that caused his hand joints to be fused together, preventing him from being able to bend his wrists upwards. Two Mice Eating Cheese is the name of London's smallest statue, which commemorates 2 construction workers who died in 1862. They were scuffling over a missing sandwich that resulted in both of them falling off the scaffolding. Turns out it was just stolen by mice. The movie Jaws directly contributed to a surge in shark hunting and a massive drop in shark populations. Author Peter Benchley deeply regretted writing Jaws, saying, "Knowing what I know now, I could never write that book today. Sharks don't target human beings, and they certainly don't hold grudges." Today, sharks kill only around 10 humans per year, but humans kill around 11,000 sharks every hour. Morbid Facts, Part 356. To lose a third of his body weight for his role in The Machinist, where he weighed 120 pounds, Christian Bale pushed his body to extreme limits, consuming nothing but coffee, a can of tuna, and a single apple every day. His goal was to reach 100 pounds before producers had to stop him so that he wouldn't die, and the movie ended up being a total flop. He then had to regain 100 pounds in 6 months to star in Batman Begins, but then had to lose 30 pounds again before filming because he'd bulked too much. In 1996, 7-year-old Jessica Dubroff tried to fly an airplane across the United States but crashed during a thunderstorm. This resulted in a law banning children from flying. In 1987, Andy the Goose was born without feet, so his owner eventually fitted him with Nike sneakers to help him walk, turning him into a famous role model for disabled kids. But one day in 1991, Andy disappeared from home and was found in a local park the next day with his wings and head ripped off. Police were able to identify the killer but didn't reveal their identity to the public. Morbid Facts, Part 357. As a child, Robert Downey Jr. was always surrounded by drugs. His father introduced him to marijuana when he was only 6 years old and allowed him to start drinking once he turned 8. By the time he became a teenager, Robert had already been addicted to cocaine, heroin, and prescription pills. RDJ struggled with these demons for more than 30 years before finally deciding to turn his life around in 2003. This was the last photo taken of Semra Aysel before she was pushed off the cliff by her husband Hakan. The pregnant 31-year-old fell for more than 1,000 feet and died immediately along with her unborn child. In 2013, an 8-year-old girl found the lifeless bodies of her parents, brother, and grandmother in her basement. They were apparently poisoned by highly toxic gas emitting from rotten potatoes after going down one by one to check on the person who went down before them. The only reason the girl didn't die was because her grandma must have left the door open before dying, allowing the gas to dissipate. Morbid Facts, Part 364. When Theo Von was born in 1980, his dad Roland was 70 years old. Theo says he was always afraid to develop a relationship with Roland because he knew his dad would die when he was at a young age. His father ended up dying in an accidental shooting accident when Theo was 16 years old. British man Andrew Haig was sentenced to life in prison earlier this year after beating his 50-year-old neighbor to death with a bag of Pokemon cards. The two had gotten into an argument after Haig's neighbor accused him of being a pedophile. Morbid Facts, Part 341. French journalist Victor Noir is more famous for his grave than his work. In 1870, he was shot dead by Napoleon's nephew and had a grave erected of him lying down as if he was just killed. Because of an obvious bulge in its pants, the grave has become a popular fertility symbol among women. Legend tells that those who kiss the statue on the lips, place a flower in his hat, and rub the genital area will experience enhanced fertility. As a result, the lips and bulge are noticeably shiny from the thousands of people who have followed the legend over the years. Jeffrey Dahmer refused to eat people with tattoos because he said the ink made the flesh taste weird. Be safe, get inked. In 1979, 16-year-old Brenda Ann Spencer killed 2 people and injured 9 others with a rifle at a San Diego elementary school. When asked why she did it, her response was, "I just don't like Mondays." In 1973, a Hindu man named Amar Bharati raised his hand as a religious gesture and hasn't put it down ever since. He spent 2 years of his life in severe pain by doing this, but eventually lost all sensation in his arm until it just stayed up. Morbid Facts, Part 343. In 1991, actor Phil Lewis, who played Mr. Mosby on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, collided head-on with another car in Maryland while driving drunk. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison for vehicular manslaughter when the 21-year-old woman he collided with died. Momcilo Gavrich of the Serbian army was the youngest soldier to have fought in World War I. He was able to join at the age of 7 after his whole family was killed by Austro-Hungarian soldiers. Mary and Margaret Gibb were a famous pair of conjoined twins who traveled with Barnum and Bailey in the 1930s. In 1966, it was discovered that Margaret had bladder cancer, but the two adamantly refused to be separated. The next year, Margaret died and Mary followed 2 minutes later, both at the age of 55. In 2021, Corinna Smith discovered that her husband had sexually assaulted her children when they were younger. In response, she filled a bucket with boiling sugar water and dumped it on him while he was asleep, leading to his incredibly painful death. Morbid Facts, Part 344. Woody Harrelson's father, Charles, was a professional hitman who once assassinated a federal judge. He was even accused of being involved in the JFK assassination in 1963. A Russian man who tried to rob a hair salon ended up being the victim when the female shop owner overpowered him. She tied him up naked and ended up using him as her sex slave for several days. 21-year-old Japanese woman Nakano Takiko was one of the last remaining samurai warriors. When she was fatally wounded during the Battle of Aizu in 1868, she asked her sister to cut off her head so that her enemies couldn't take it as a trophy. BTK killer Dennis Rader used to install security systems for homeowners. Many of his clients wanted the security systems to prevent the BTK killer from ever entering their homes, unaware that he was the very person installing them. In the 17th century, Lazarus Colorado was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, but he was later pardoned over a strange technicality thanks to his parasitic twin. Lazarus argued that the death would kill his twin who was innocent. A jury agreed and the man was released. Morbid Facts, Part 346. In 2004, Thomas and Jackie Hawks decided to sell their 55-foot yacht to spend more time with their family. Soon enough, former Power Rangers actor Skylar Delian contacted the couple saying he was interested in purchasing. Tom and Jackie were suspicious of Skylar at first, but they became more receptive when his pregnant wife Jennifer and their other child came to the next meeting, so they agreed to take him on a test run of the boat. Skylar brought with him 2 associates who, unbeknownst to Tom and Jackie, turned out to be former convicts. Once they were on the boat, the 3 men beat Thomas and Jackie, overpowered them with tasers, tied them up, and forced Thomas to sign the yacht away to Skylar. Afterwards, they tied the couple to the boat's anchor and threw them overboard to drown. Their bodies were never recovered. Days afterwards, Delian tried to empty the couple's bank account, but the entire plot was soon foiled when the accomplices confessed to the heinous murders. Thankfully, Skylar and Jennifer Delian will now spend the rest of their lives rotting away in prison. Morbid Facts, Part 347. In 1996, mountain climber Beck Weathers and his team attempted to scale Mount Everest. But after coming down with a bad case of snow blindness, Weathers got stuck in a severe blizzard with a wind chill of -100 degrees and soon fell into a hypothermic coma. He miraculously survived, but had to have his nose and both hands amputated as a result of severe frostbite. Nicknamed Mr. Titanic, this was the last photo taken of French diver and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. He saw the Titanic 37 different times before dying on his 38th trip on board OceanGate's Titan submersible. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane that was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the other passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of those children is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. Morbid Facts, Part 358. This was one of the last photos captured of Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple. It was taken just a few days before he passed away from pancreatic cancer on October 5, 2011. During World War I, 20-year-old French soldier Albert Roche was found sleeping on duty and was sentenced to death for abandoning his post. But thankfully, a messenger arrived just moments before his execution to tell the full story. Albert had crawled for nearly 10 hours under enemy fire to rescue his wounded captain before passing out from exhaustion. In 2013, a Chinese businessman hired a hitman to take out his competitor for $282,000. But the hitman hired another hitman to do the job, offering $141,000. That man then hired another hitman, who hired another hitman, who hired another hitman. The 5th hitman, who was offered $14,000 for the job, tried convincing the target to fake his own death. But instead, he reported the threat to authorities, and all 6 men, including the original businessman, were sent to prison. Morbid Facts, Part 359. In 1955, 24-year-old actor James Dean died in a car crash while driving his Porsche 550 Spider, which he nicknamed Little Bastard. After the accident, the car was towed to a garage in Los Angeles, and while it was being repaired, it fell off its jack and crushed a mechanic's legs. The engine and transmission were later sold to 2 professional racers, both of whom later crashed their vehicles during the same race and were seriously injured. The car's tires were also sold, and the new owner was eventually killed in yet another car crash. Over time, the stories of deaths and injuries associated with the car led to rumors of a curse. Some believed that the car was haunted and that anyone who came into contact with it would suffer misfortune. But in 1960, the car disappeared while being transported from Miami to Los Angeles. The car has never been found, and its whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 360. In 2021, University of Missouri student Danny Santoli was rushing to become a new member of the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity. Knowing the process was hard on him, his family urged him to back out, but he wanted to prove himself to the fraternity bros. On October 19th of that year, the fraternity held their Pledge Father Reveal Night, which would end up going down as one of the worst hazing disasters in American history. Along with the other pledges, Danny was blindfolded and led down to a basement where he was force-fed beer through a tube and told to finish an entire 750 of Tito's vodka. Around midnight, Danny was sitting on the couch in extreme distress with a blood alcohol level of .468, nearly 6 times the legal limit. Soon enough, Danny became unresponsive and was rushed to the hospital in cardiac arrest. He was later declared brain dead as a result of alcohol poisoning and spent the next 8 months in the hospital. He's now blind, unable to walk, talk, or do virtually anything by himself. 11 members of the frat were criminally charged for the horrific incident. Morbid Facts, Part 361. In 2011, Chicago man Robert Lyons bludgeoned his mother with a champagne bottle before relentlessly stabbing her and pouring chemicals all over her body. He did this all because she refused to buy him skybox tickets for an upcoming Avril Lavigne concert. Robert was 39 years old at the time. This was the last photo taken of resistance leader Chiang Bin-hua just moments before she was executed by bayonet. She led a Chinese guerrilla movement against the Japanese during the invasion of her country before she was captured in 1938. While in captivity, the 24-year-old was brutally tortured and gang-raped by several guards but died with a defiant smile on her face. In 2022, 70-year-old Maya Murma was collecting water in India when an elephant suddenly trampled her. She was quickly rushed to the hospital, but ended up dying from her catastrophic injuries. When family members gathered for her funeral, the same elephant appeared, threw Murmu's body into the air, and trampled it again. Morbid Facts, Part 345. One day in the summer of 1984, James Huberty told his wife Etna that he believed he was developing a mental health problem. 2 days later, he asked for an appointment at a San Diego mental health clinic. But the call was logged as a non-crisis since Huberty sounded very polite and stated that he'd never experienced any mental health issues in the past, so he didn't receive a call back that day. The next morning, while at the San Diego Zoo with his family, Huberty told his wife that his life was effectively over. Referring to the clinic's failure to return his phone call, he said society had their chance. Upon returning home, he leaned toward his wife and said, "I want to kiss you goodbye. I'm going hunting for humans." While holding a gun across his shoulder walking out the door, Huberty told his daughter Zelia, "Goodbye, I won't be back." He then drove to the parking lot of a McDonald's near his home and opened fire. James fatally shot 21 people and wounded 19 others before being killed by a police sniper 77 minutes later. Morbid Facts, Part 346. In 2004, Thomas and Jackie Hawks decided to sell their 55-foot yacht to spend more time with their family. Soon enough, former Power Rangers actor Skylar Delian contacted the couple saying he was interested in purchasing. Tom and Jackie were suspicious of Skylar at first, but they became more receptive when his pregnant wife Jennifer and their other child came to the next meeting, so they agreed to take him on a test run of the boat. Skylar brought with him 2 associates who, unbeknownst to Tom and Jackie, turned out to be former convicts. Once they were on the boat, the 3 men beat Thomas and Jackie, overpowered them with tasers, tied them up, and forced Thomas to sign the yacht away to Skylar. Afterwards, they tied the couple to the boat's anchor and threw them overboard to drown. Their bodies were never recovered. Days afterwards, Delian tried to empty the couple's bank account, but the entire plot was soon foiled when the accomplices confessed to the heinous murders. Thankfully, Skylar and Jennifer Delian will now spend the rest of their lives rotting away in prison. Morbid Facts, Part 347. In 1996, mountain climber Beck Weathers and his team attempted to scale Mount Everest. But after coming down with a bad case of snow blindness, Weathers got stuck in a severe blizzard with a wind chill of -100 degrees and soon fell into a hypothermic coma. He miraculously survived, but had to have his nose and both hands amputated as a result of severe frostbite. Nicknamed Mr. Titanic, this was the last photo taken of French diver and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. He saw the Titanic 37 different times before dying on his 38th trip on board OceanGate's Titan submersible. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane that was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the other passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of those children is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. Morbid Facts, Part 348. For most of his life, former jock Jason Padgett believed that math was stupid and pointless. But that all changed in 2002 when he was badly beaten outside of a karaoke bar, resulting in a severe concussion. The very next day, he suddenly woke up and had miraculously become a math genius. Thanks to an extremely rare condition called acquired savant syndrome, Jason could now see the world in complex geometric shapes and fractals. Here's a 1923 photo of Russian leader Vladimir Lenin, by which point he had suffered 3 strokes and was completely mute. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. Many houses that people say are haunted have been found to contain high levels of carbon monoxide or other poisons that can cause hallucinations. This may explain why haunted houses are usually older homes, which are more likely to contain old and defective appliances. Morbid Facts, Part 349. In 2013, Zac Efron was running through his house with socks on when he suddenly slipped. He smashed his face into the corner of a granite fountain so hard that it shattered his jaw and nearly killed him. He was immediately knocked unconscious, and when he woke up, part of his chin was hanging off his face. In response to more recent plastic surgery rumors, Zac claimed that his cheek muscles overgrew to compensate for the muscles that were permanently damaged from that injury. Union Army soldier Jacob Miller was shot in the forehead during the Civil War. Left for dead, he somehow woke up a few hours later and lived on for another 54 years. Mac Ray Evans was a serial killer who used to work for Caltrans throughout the 1950s and 60s. He'd bury his victims, who were mostly children, in places where he would later help build the highways on top of. Many of his victims were never found and are likely still under some of the California highways that thousands of people drive over each day. In 2012, Texas nurse Kimberly Sains was sentenced to life in prison after killing 5 of her patients by injecting bleach into their dialysis lines. Here are some of the distress calls that were painted onto houses during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Many refused to evacuate their homes because they weren't allowed to bring any pets into sheltering areas. The Category 5 hurricane ended up taking the lives of around 1,400 people and 500,000 pets. Morbid Facts, Part 365. In September of 2008, Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker survived a plane crash that killed 4 out of the 6 people on board. He suffered third-degree burns over 65% of his body and underwent 16 surgeries over an 11-week span. Travis was in so much pain that he repeatedly called friends and offered them over $1 million to help him end his own life. A prion disease called Kuru can be contracted when a human consumes another human's brain. It was typically found in cannibals from New Guinea who would consume the brains of their dead relatives as part of a funerary ritual. The fatal disease would slowly form holes in the victims' brains and cause them to laugh uncontrollably. In 2016, a Texas father drove home and went to sleep, forgetting that his 6-month-old daughter was still strapped to her car seat. Hours later, he found her unresponsive in the blistering hot car. Before attempting CPR and calling 911, he brought her inside and placed her in the refrigerator to try and revive her. But the child had likely died hours earlier, and the man was charged with manslaughter. Morbid Facts, Part 373. The photo on the right shows a Houston police officer reacting outside the home where Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in 2001. She started by holding 3 of her boys underwater in her bathtub until they stopped struggling. She then drowned her 6-month-old Mary, whom she left floating in the tub. Her last living child, Noah, soon walked in and asked what was wrong with Mary, then ran when he realized what was going on. But Yates quickly caught up to the 7-year-old and drowned him as well. Afterwards, she laid the lifeless bodies of her children together in her bed. She then called the police, repeatedly saying she needed an officer but refusing to say why. During the trial, the defense argued that Yates was severely mentally ill and not in control of her actions during the murders. She was in a deeply delusional state, believing she needed to murder her children to prevent them from going to hell. In 2006, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity and committed to a high-security mental hospital in Texas, where she remains to this day. Morbid Facts, Part 374. Jeanette McCurdy has described the relationship she had with her mother Deborah as both emotionally and sexually abusive. When Jeanette was 3 years old, her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent multiple surgeries and transplants. As a result, Deborah would perform routine vaginal and breast exams on Jeanette and never allowed her to shower alone until she turned 17. Living in poverty, her mother forced Jeanette into acting when she was 6 years old to financially support the family, and because Deborah had always wanted to become famous herself. McCurdy says that her mother was obsessed with making her a star and introduced Jeanette to a calorie restriction once she turned 11, leading to various eating disorders that Jeanette still struggles with, including anorexia and bulimia. McCurdy says that she refused to appear in the revival series of iCarly only because she didn't want to be reminded of her mother's abuse during the original show. Just last year, Jeanette released a book with the title I'm Glad My Mom Died 9 years after she passed away from breast cancer. A 34-year-old man with ALS completely lost the ability to move anything, including his eyes. When a brain chip finally allowed him to communicate again, the first thing he said was, "I need a beer." Morbid Facts, Part 369. Here's a 2021 photo of Alec Baldwin breaking down in tears after firing a prop gun that killed the director of photography on the movie set of Rust. The tragic incident happened as a result of catastrophic failures in safety procedures on the set. The woman who was responsible for checking the firearms was only 24 years old and had very little experience in her role. Rust was her second film as lead armorer, since she had previously worked on another Western film called The Old Way, where she received multiple safety complaints from the cast and crew. She also admitted on a podcast that she felt overwhelmed and underprepared for her job on Rust. The live round that killed Helena Hutchins and injured Joel Souza was not supposed to be on the set at all. The production had a very strict rule that banned any live ammunition on the premises, and only blanks or dummy rounds could be used. But it was later revealed that some of the crew members used the same guns for target practice with live rounds during their off hours, and had failed to properly clean and inspect the weapons before returning them to the armory. Morbid Facts, Part 370. In 2010, the teenage daughter of Michelle Kalina came across something horrifying in her mother's closet: the decomposed remains of 5 babies. Over the course of 14 years, Michelle gave birth to at least 5 children, ending their lives immediately after they were born. She was sentenced to between 20 and 40 years in prison. When Frank Zappa was a child, he always played with the mercury that his chemist father brought home from work, often covering his entire bedroom floor with the element. But childhood exposure to mercury is now known to cause prostate cancer as an adult, which Zappa would end up dying from at the age of 52. In 1978, over 2,000 students from Pennsylvania tried to set the world record for the largest game of tug-of-war. But instead, the 2,000-foot rope snapped, releasing several thousand pounds of stored energy. Nearly 200 students were wounded, 5 had their fingertips severed, and hundreds more received second-degree burns. Morbid Facts, Part 375. Actress Brittany Murphy and her husband both mysteriously passed away from pneumonia and severe anemia in their home only 5 months apart. Murphy's mom believes both of them were victims of toxic mold. Jonah Hill had to be hospitalized while filming The Wolf of Wall Street after snorting too much fake cocaine. In 2021, an 82-year-old man from Austria had the wrong leg amputated during surgery. The man was told he would still need his other leg amputated as well. The hospital said the incident occurred as a result of a sequence of unfortunate circumstances. Here's a devastating photo of a Colorado police officer distracting a little girl after her dad lost his life in a car accident. Judy Melanik is a medical examiner who identified hundreds of bodies after the 9/11 attacks, most of which were just scraps of flesh or pieces of limbs. She was called in August of 2002 because someone had found a foot bone on top of a skyscraper a quarter mile away from Ground Zero.